if any form of indication. If there's anyone there, can you, maybe check that we
it says live in the upper left-hand corner.
Yeah, it does. Okay. So I guess we can just...
Yeah, we're live.
We're live. Okay. So yeah, welcome back. If there's any viewers who tune in to the Dream Data LinkedIn live sessions, which we host a number of times a week at times, welcome back. And it's the first time I'm hosting. I've had the pleasure of being a guest a couple of times, but it's the first time that I'm hosting. And, I'm very happy to count with some pretty big names in the B2B scene, such as Patrick Campbell and April Dunford and Bill Mercedes, who have all joined us here at some point. And speaking of names, we've got two, I would, frame you guys as rising stars in the B2B content scene. Truly, I think you're putting out some pretty insightful stuff on LinkedIn, and if you're not following them, please do so immediately, because any minute you miss some golden nugget or two that was going to change the way you do your content marketing in B2B. So specifically, I think Lashay has put a name out for her on bottom of the funnel content, and it's how vital it is to the and often ignored, a taboo even, as I put in the title of the discussion. And Tas has also similarly looked at the other side of the coin of paid marketing and given us already in her LinkedIn content some really good nuggets, which I hope you'll both cover in depth and at length in this conversation. So yeah, nice to have you both on.
So excited
Thank
to be
you
here.
for having us. Yes.
So I think we could, speaking of the title, why not just a nice introductory conversation about why this taboo of including your product? I mean, who's not come across some advice? And I certainly have, especially when I started out in content and B2B content marketing, about, do not mention your product. Stay far away from it, as far away from it as you can. In fact, also this building your a media platform around your solution, kind of that just does its own thing and is tangential to, is this, where does that go wrong in your view? Where should we be introducing the product, and why is it such a taboo so far, in content marketing?
Taz, I'll let you take this one because I know you have like a ton of in-house experience and all the politics, so I know you can give some good advisement on this one.
She's setting me up to talk about the politics. Okay. I think that there's this trajectory that happens in a marketer's career, especially in B2B, where we start off with, okay, we're just going to use some common sense. And then as we're trained up and we get higher and higher, we have to report the outcomes to leadership, the outcomes to the C-level, the outcomes to the board, and then subsequently VCs who are funding B2B startups specifically. So what ends up happening is the message gets convoluted, where we think that we need to talk to customers the same way that we talk to VCs, which is selling on the vision, selling on the outcomes. So there's a place for it. It's not entirely wrong. It's just when we're trying to make it cookie cutter and we're saying the same thing to a person utilizing the product to the person who is funding, the entire business, because the people who are funding the business want the vision. They want the 5-year, 10-year, what do you see this, platform being? Oh, it's going to be all in one. It's going to help companies rev up the revenue, and we're going to be everything that they need and any other product. And we're going to do world domination. Cool. But your customers don't want that. They don't want something to come in and them. Actually, I just recently read April Dunford's book as well. And she talks about that. She goes, the disruption element actually scares customers because they've worked so hard to invest in all the technology and the processes that they have today in place. So when you come in and are saying, we're going to disrupt we're going to disrupt everything, they don't want that. They want you to solve a very small, specific problem. And you're going to do that on a product level. What is the immediate problem that they have? The Fletch PMM guy, so Anthony Perry and they talk a lot about, what's the level issue, not the root issue, right? So the immediate outcome of solving something from a product feature like Loom, they're going to help you eliminate meetings. You can just simply send a 5-minute Loom explaining something. You saved everybody time. That's an immediate benefit of having that product. So I think taking that down and putting it back into marketing, where we're talking to customers a different way than we would talk to someone who expects us to have a vision down the road. I think that's super important. So it's almost like a full circle moment where we're coming back to that common sense marketing after being trained to do something a certain way. I think the experienced marketers today are untraining themselves and going to the product. And it's actually kind of easy. So do it, product led in front of you. It's just like, how can I say this in layman's terms to a customer?
Yeah, agreed. Just to touch on that a little bit, I know Taz kind of talked about, we talk to our customers different than we talk to our peers and things like that. And I would say the same holds true as it relates to top, mid, and bottom of funnel. And I know some people don't like it being called that, but it's really just a groupings to show like where someone is mentally throughout the buyer's journey. And when you're targeting top of funnel content, it's written differently than bottom of funnel. So it's like, to play again into what she says, it's like top of funnel content is more objective, where bottom of funnel content is more subjective, right? We start getting into best this for that and this versus that, where you really have to start leaning into your value props, versus top of funnel where you don't have to do that too much. So that was just to kind of talk and play on what she was talking about, how the verbiage and the language kind of needs to be different. Not even with just talking to like peers, but even when we talk about just within the funnel, the content still needs to have range.
Yeah, and just a bit more in your experience when you guys have gone, out. I think you're both doing agency work, right? When you correct me if I'm wrong, but when you go out and you meet clients, what sense do you get about this kind of apprehension or old school way of thinking? And of course, what do you do to start remedying that? To start reintroducing these pain points as the main focus, and saying, hey guys, don't be scared about, don't focus on this objectivity, which speaks to a very particular, if anyone, a very particular type of individual, which might not be even in the market. So how do you just go through some of the steps you take to remedy this?
I don't know if you see this in your experience, Lashay, but when I get on a call with companies, I feel like they're already bought into, the way we're looking at it, our perspective on it, because they've been following the content for a while. So we do a lot of the education piece on our perspective via content, via conversations like this, where they listen in. So by the time they have a conversation with us, they're kind of 80% there. And now we start getting into the tactical nature of it, which is, I get it. The old way sucks. It clearly isn't working for us. What do you have in place to help us transition to this new way? And both Lashay and I have frameworks that we plug our clients into, and then they have the aha moment when they see the copy, changing, when they see the messaging changing, when they see the layouts changing. And I think that's kind of the thing. And it's funny because that's technically the B2B buyer's journey too, is you want your, before you waste your salesperson's time or the prospect's time, the prospect needs to be there, needs to be 80% of the way already. So we're kind of doing a lot of that, where we're practicing what we preach. We're putting out a lot of the content that educates them on that change. And then by the time they come to us, they're like, I'm ready for that change. What do I need to do now? What's the investment, time, resources? What do I need to put in? So we don't see a lot of having to convince them. They're just excited to see what the end product is going to look like.
Yeah, agreed. Most of the prospects that come to us are already educated. And like Taz said, we do a lot of that through the content. So if we want to get meta, diving back into the whole funnel analogy, our LinkedIn's would be more top of funnel, like high level awareness. Okay, who are these women? What are they doing? And then you move down a little bit, you start talking about jobs to be done. It's like, okay, how I help SaaS companies do X, Y, and Z. When that resonates with the audience, that's when they move further. And then you introduce the opportunity of them working with you. And that kind of how, and again, we keep it super simple. We don't do too much. Like, it's just a lot of pre-education. And like Tess said, by the time they come to us, they're already warmed up. They just want to know, how much is it? And then what the engagement looks like. And, if they have to get executive buy-in. But a lot of our prospects champion us for their company. You know what I mean? It's like they look at the content, they share it around. So not only do we have ourselves selling our service, but we have in-house people selling it too, because we educate them.
And it's the same thing from the product standpoint, right? You're going to enable the champion to do the internal selling, because if you rely on your inexperienced SDR or account executive who's been out of college for like 2 years or whatever, and they're trying to sell to the CEO or decision maker, that's not the way you go. So you find your champion who's like, yes, we need to do this differently. You educate them, you give them the tools. So that's another thing I think that Lashay and I try to do, is iterate on the process as much as we can. So certain things will get feedback and then we act on it immediately, because we can move very quickly. So something like she said, okay, they get on the call, they want to know pricing. Well, our pricing doesn't really change for everybody. So we're just like, cool, we're just going to put it on the website, and here you're going to have all the information you need. Do they need a little more explanation on the process? Cool, here's a Loom that you can share around, versus trying to get everybody on a call. So it's just making the process a lot easier for them, and making sure that the champion has all the information they need. Also, the other side of that is, I mean, this is going to sound bad, because it's like, obviously I'm not running a nonprofit. We already talked about it, Jeremy. I have 2 kids to feed. And both my kids are like 99th percentile gigantic children, thanks to my husband, who's 6'2" something. And so for me, even if there are clients that don't want to work with us, that's fine. The education and the frameworks are being shared very freely, because at the end of the day, I've been in-house. Lashay's been at agencies like most of her career. I've been in-house at B2B companies most of my career. And I think at the end of the day, it's evangelizing a better way to do marketing, and setting that standard. So if you feel like you can take some of the pieces and apply it yourself, please do. Try, because I would much rather that than seeing one more ad that is going to revolutionize the way that I do my whole life and work and everything else. Those things need to change.
Yeah, I think that ties, speaking of your advice, it ties into a point that you make about landing pages themselves, which is, they're not these static things, but rather an iterative. In fact, I think you used the word sandbox, right? They're a sandbox where you're going to, and I quite like that advice, and I think it might be worth you talking about it a little bit, and also the relationship. I think I saw the relationship it has with as a test bed for your site in general. The way that you can constantly move things and change things, and obviously integrate your product into that content. So can you give us in a nutshell kind of?
Yeah, this is my favorite concept. So I've managed a lot of websites, or touched a lot of websites in my career, like 400 of them. And it's always been a fight, especially the homepage has always been a fight between all these various departments who are trying to get their little, POV in there. So then you have HR saying, dump a bunch of awards. And then you say product people who show them all our features. And then you have the CEO who's like, our hero has to have the vision all in one. They love that. Seamless. And so you see that the homepage specifically ends up being this quilt experience of everybody's opinions on there. And a way to combat a little bit of that. And so if you want to change any part of the homepage, you have to get buy-in from everybody and their brother at the company, right? That's always an uphill battle for me. I always said in-house, it was 80% of managing communications. 80% of my job was emailing and making sure that everybody was okay with what I was doing. And so coming out now, I'm like, okay, how do I equip my champion to make informed decisions that's in the best interest of the customer, so that eventually it would drive more revenue and pipeline for them, right? The stuff that they're selling. But and the way to do that is, if we wish we could only test the messaging before it went to market. And people do that with, like, we'll run A/B tests of, ads, and you'll have 2 variations of a landing page. Cool. But most of the time they're doing that for things like white papers or events or some random ad, and it's never looked at again. We pick a winner and then we do nothing with it, right? So if we had a way to test in a very, very controlled space, our messaging, our CTAs, what features are resonating. If you have a dozen features, you're not going to dump all the dozen features on there. You're going to take the 3 best use cases, right? You're going to showcase that, see how people are resonating based on the data, and then take it back. So now when you want to make a change on the homepage and someone says, no, we need to feature these 3 things on there. And you're like, well, we actually ran a test. We spent $30,000 or whatever, astronomical number, but, and we ran 2 iterations of this. People loved these 3 features specifically. Those need to be on the page. Who's going to argue with you when there is data, and not just, you have random people coming to your site, but if you have a paid experience that's running to this very controlled page, right? No distractions. And you have people coming there who are your ICP. If your targeting is done right, it should be people who are in your ICP, in your target market, who are responding directly to something that you've put out. And you have that data to take back to, hey, Mr. CEO, this is great. Love your copy. We'll put it on the roadmap. We'll just say we did test 2 iterations of this based on our ICP of head of marketing at B2B companies, X revenue. This is the response we're getting. We really think that there's something here. Let's put this on the homepage and see, what we can do. And so taking those things back just kind of gives you ammunition versus just this fighting of opinions of what needs to go on there. And I think that's kind of a way to leverage paid media and use it in a way that's larger than just a campaign. You're leveraging it for your entire website strategy. Now you can do this for the homepage. You can do this for your product pages. You can do this for competitor comparison pages, right? You can do it for your pricing, and you can do it for your demo. So these are all the core pages that essentially live on your website. And now you have a data-driven sandbox, and you can document all of that. And they'll always have, the paths to why you landed on the copy that you did, or the CTAs, or the imagery, all of those things. My very long-winded explanation, but I'm very passionate about the topic.
Yeah, I think it's very good advice. It's exactly that as you've ended, right? It's leveraging, you're paid for something else than just attracting that traffic. And I think we can get back to it in a little bit, because there was another nugget that I found quite interesting. But I want to bring in Lashay just on this competitor element, right? And there's, I wanted just to kind of, if you could discuss the process in general. But one thing that I think is a bit of a sticking point in terms of trying to get kind of a quick win content strategy is building competitor pages, building even just generally bottom of the funnel, more product focused pages are hard. And we all know that most B2B products are pretty complex, or can be. How do you get around that when we see, the system moving towards freelancers, agencies, language learning models, how can you keep the inherent expertise you need in order to get some of the quick wins, quote unquote, that you might be able to get from a bottom of the funnel strategy that you advocate?
Yeah, so just to preface this a little bit, I started out as a freelance writer before I went to agencies and everything like that. And we're taught to look on the first page of Google and then compile the top 10 results and then mix it and match it and make it our own thing. And we expect for that to bring us inbound leads. And then when it doesn't, we're like, well, what's going on? Well, what's really happening is that your message isn't resonating because you're trying to take all of your competitors' messaging and put it together and call it a comparison page. But in actuality, none of the information you need to create comparison pages comes from Google. It actually comes from within your org. So, and I tell companies like the best time to do any of this, like between what Taz and I, both do, is when you have product market fit, because that's when you start to understand, okay, what the product is, who it helps, and how it helps. So if sales, marketing, CS, and product all can agree on those things, that's when you start to have alignment. Once you have alignment, you take customer pain points and benefits and features and things like that, and then you start to lead with that in your comparison pages, right? So I know you talked about in the beginning, companies not wanting to include the product and the content. It's like, so if you were on Amazon and you wanted to purchase something and there's like no reviews, there's no pictures, it's like when we go to Amazon, we all do the same thing. We scroll down to the part where people upload their own pictures so we can see what it looks like and the review. So it's like, how do you expect for your buyer to want to buy from you and you're not letting them know what you do, how you do it better than everybody else, right? And this is something that Taz and I talked about quite a bit as well when it comes to controlling your narrative, right? So companies go back and forth a lot about the whole comparison page thing. Should we do it? Should we not do it? It's like the only person that you're hurting by not doing it is yourself and your team. And I know this is getting a little bit more into like, I'm on a rant right now. So it's like at the top, the decisions are made as it relates to like, oh, the messaging and the competitive positioning and this and this and that. But it's like when us content marketers try to include that in the content, we're, don't do that, right? So now we have to try to come up with ways and to make this work. And then when the numbers come back and the content isn't generating inbound leads, executive management is like, whoa, what's going on? But in actuality, it's actually, I don't want to say their fault, but it's like this falls on them. So I encourage leaders to encourage communication among teams. If your communication is siloed, that's a sure way to not get alignment. So I would say interviewing internal teams, extracting the most important information. And for me on the bottom of funnel side, it's pain points, features, benefits, consequences, case studies. I mean, this is a lot of information to collect, but it's collected in a systematized fashion, right? So we do one thing, this, it's a repeatable, very repeatable process. So once we have that information, that's when we start weaving it into the comparison pages. It's like, this person has a pain point. This is the benefit of the pain point being solved. This is the feature that solves that pain point. Here's the capability, right? So it's like drilling. And again, like Taz said, it's like finding the 3 or 4 most used features of that specific use case and then dive deep on that. Don't say, oh, we've got 15 features and everybody, like feature dumping doesn't work, right? So figuring out the specific use case. And even when we come to like bottom of funnel content, it's like, now we're getting into, I'm on such a rant. We're getting into like account-based marketing. So when we start, targeting, if I'm working with a company that has multiple products, what we'll do is we'll break it down by product and then create kind of like an account-based marketing campaign for each individual product, right? And everything still stays the same. It's like all of the most important elements in the bottom of funnel piece are still included in all of these. It's just the positioning. And that's why that's so important again, right? So it's like with Salesforce, bunch of different products, bunch of different ICPs. It's like you can't market Salesforce to a, to 2 different ICPs. And I can't think of the top of my head what their ICPs are. I have a graphic, but I can't think of it. But the positioning has to change based on the ideal customer profile. Long story short, right? And And then the most important elements that you need for a bottom of funnel piece comes within your org. And then even to play on what Taz was saying about the sandbox, like the information that you get from paid ads rolls back into organic. So if she's running a campaign and she sees like, okay, these 3 or 4 features really hit hard, we're getting high conversion rates, we can take those 3 to 4 features and use those for the comparison pages, right? So everything is kind of just like fueling one another. And it's sort of like this calculated information cycle. So if I write a comparison page and it does well and the features do well, I can give that to her. And then she can test it in her sandbox of paid ads and things like that. And we just kind of have that back and forth flow of information going.
Yeah. And actually, you touch on a point that that kind of symbiosis between the paid and the organic. But I want to point that I read on Tas's commentary on LinkedIn, which is the dangers of using your landing page in SEO, in your SEO plays. I think you mentioned the fact that it's a living document. It is that sandbox again, and there's a danger in trying to incorporate that into your SEO strategy. So I just want to use that as a bit of a segue into just the SEO side of things, both from the landing page perspective and whether or not it should be a complete no-no, and also Lashay, after generally from the bottom of the funnel perspective, the power of BOFU for SEO. So if you could take those points.
I'll do the landing page piece. So when I posted about the paid, the differences between, a web page and a landing page, one of the things I said was that a landing page should not be indexed for SEO. And it was like a shark attack. The number of people were like, well, why wouldn't you want multiple sources of traffic? And, but we could rank for it. And I'm like, yes. And there's place for that, right? The landing page is a continuous work of art, and it's always changing. It's always moving. If you're doing it correctly, you are running multiple experiments on there, either through sprints, A/B testing, all of those things. Those are not conducive to SEO that needs time to build, to rank, right? And so if Google crawls the site and then the page has changed, it could work against you depending on what you're trying to test. So I think that then what ends up happening is the ranking for the landing page becomes a distraction. It's a metric that you'll end up focusing on instead of actually focusing on the fact that you are trying to test different iterations of CTAs, imagery, what assets resonate, what messaging resonates. So there are areas of consumption you need to focus on and not worry about algorithms, not worry about, any other SEO metric that you're trying to track. There's a time and place for it. Now, say you've been running kind of a product sandbox for a while, and you're like, no matter how much we try, it's these 3 features that are standing out, these 3 use cases, these 3 pain points, this exact walkthrough. Okay, I think we're in really good shape. And this can now swap out our product page on the main site. You swap them out, index, and you're off to the races, right? You've given your best shot of success there. You're not going to make a ton of changes. It's ready. So that's one piece of it. As Lashay alluded to before, when we take that sandbox concept and we're testing the different pain points, features, benefits, all the things that she would leverage in her long form content, you take all of those things, you understand what works. Now she can take that, focus on those, core things that have driven the most conversions or engagement from the ICP, create long form content that sits on the blog, that's product led, more bottom of the funnel, subjective, and then give that the best chance for success as well. So you definitely, with the sandbox concept, I don't want you to get dinged by it, from Google or from the search engines, because you will have duplicate content, especially in the beginning. You're likely going to go clone your product page. You're going to change a lot of things and then test over time. You don't want to get distracted by all of those things. The whole point is to just give you a little playground and build some things, see what works, and then you can leverage it for SEO later. So I'm not saying no SEO, I'm saying not now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time and place for it.
And the funny thing is, imagine trying to tell somebody not to focus on SEO as an actual SEO professional, right? So that's a lot of what I have to do. And just as Taz mentioned, like I tell people, even on my end, like on the organic side, I still tell them don't focus on SEO. And that's a tricky sell because I mean, I guess in a way that would be like my value prop is that I can rank you quicker and da 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 da. But here's the thing, it's like after doing this for so long, you realize that anybody can rank a piece of content, right? That's not the impressive part. The impressive part is actually attributing pipeline to the content that you put out, right? And as Taz so wonderfully said it the other day, it's giving content marketers a seat at the revenue table, right? Right now, we don't really have that because it's so difficult to track pipeline back to content. And one of the reasons it's difficult to do that because, again, going on my top of funnel rant, when you're targeting top of funnel, that sales cycle could be anywhere from 6 to 9 months plus, right? The odds of you tracking that person in every touch point down to when they purchase from you is like so, yeah, versus bottom of funnel where the conversion is so close, it's easier to track, right? So again, playing to the point of what she said about telling them SEO is not important as a time and a place. Well, they come to me and I say the same thing. It's like SEO is important, but you don't rank how you think you rank, right? The misconception is, oh, I need to include this many keywords and this has to be in here and I need to put it in this tool. We all have access to the same tools. What makes you different, right? Like if Taz has, let's just say we're competitors, for example, if she has ClearScope, which is my favorite on-page SEO tool, and I have ClearScope, what's stopping me from beating her or her from beating me? It's not the tool, right? It's you. So when you start, again, interviewing those internal teams and gathering that information, and then a lot of what she gathers helps me as well, kind of how we touched on. It's like that information that she gets cuts their time down with me quite significantly because I already have all the info. And then we just take that and I'll, consult with her to figure out which landing pages are converting, which features are converting and benefits and how are we positioning this. And again, everything flows into everything. We're two sides of the same coin. A high intent coin, one side is organic and the other side is paid.
I like that. That will probably go on the quote on the as a quote on the blog. I mean, okay, let's touch on the alignment aspect because I really want to home in again on the expertise element, which I mentioned earlier, but I think I really want to try and push a little harder. If I'm a new startup or relatively early stage company with a tiny marketing team, and I'm listening to you guys and I'm saying, okay, look, it's possible to acquire the right traffic at a bottom of the funnel stage or through paid using these product elements on my landing page, which I'm testing to find my favorite features. Right. Scalability, given perhaps lack of knowledge, of detailed knowledge on the product. How much does alignment play into that? How dangerous is relying on freelancers? Lashay, you were talking earlier about, as you come in as a freelancer, you read the top 10 hits on Google, and then that's kind of how you're building your page. To what degree should you be relying on those experts that do exist in the company, and what does that say for time? Is a quick win achievable with a product focused strategy?
I'd say so, yes. So alignment is everything because it leaks into every part of your marketing. It's like if you're not aligned, your email marketing is going to suffer, your video marketing is going to suffer, your blogs is going to suffer, your paid ads, everything is going to suffer, right? So I think alignment is everything in the beginning. And I think why companies struggle a lot to create product-led content with freelancers is because the freelancers don't understand their product at a deep enough level, right? Like they hire this person to bring them in and say, okay, well, this is the, product, take a look at our website, this, that, and the third. It's like, that's not giving them enough information. And then people sit and complain about how many terrible writers there are. But in actuality, you should probably do some self-reflection and make sure that you're giving them the information that they need in order to be successful. Because freelance writers, a lot of the responsibility falls on our shoulders. And alignment is not on our shoulders. That's on your company's shoulders, right? Like, but if I'm coming in as a freelancer and you don't have alignment, I'm bearing that responsibility on my back. I'm stressing myself out because I'm like, okay, why is this content not converting? And why is the messaging off? And it's a lot of edits and back and forth and it's just a lot. So when you start, that's when I start working with companies, I make sure before we even do anything that there's alignment. If there's not alignment, that's when they kind of have some work to do on their end. But if they come to me and they're aligned, freelance writers work great. It's just all about training them properly.
And let me just say from an in-house perspective, and I tell Lashay this all the time, you are not going to solve an alignment issue that's within a company. That's not it. But as a person who has worked in-house, I can tell you that within marketing itself, I have a very different viewpoint of what the product is compared to the head of content, the head of brand, demand gen, ops, right? They all look at the product and know different aspects about the product. And what ends up happening is, the only person who knows anything about the product is the product marketer, and it's their responsibility and they're going to drive it. And that's it, the end, right? I would say that it's everyone's responsibility to learn about that. And one of the key aspects of our relationship starting with any company is the teach us about your product thing. And there are companies who be like, I'm going to send you a whole bunch of messaging docs. We have our whole like presentation kit. I'll send you a sales kit. I'm like, no, I'm not sifting through all of your documentation that I know you haven't read, because I've been one of those marketers that I've not read that either. So it's almost like before we even get to the meat of what we do with them, I'm going to say, let's spend some time together, right? Let's spend an hour together in our kickoff. During that kickoff, I'm going to ask you pointed questions about your product, about your sales process, about your best fit customers. And even if we stop right there and they decide after that 1 hour call, they don't want to work with us anymore, or me or whatever, they already know more about their product and process than they did the hour before, because they need someone to kind of push them to articulate it in layman's terms, right? They're not going to sit on a call and tell me that, so what we do is we optimize the revenue flow. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? And so they're going to have to articulate and sell the product to me, because if they can't sell it to me, an outsider, they are not going to sell it to their ICP. And what it ends up doing is then the people in marketing have a better understanding of the product. And if they take that back, now they can apply it to their email marketing, their paid programs, their social content, their organic content, thought leadership content. It makes a little way through everything else, right? And so the alignment part is more about self-educating marketing on their own product so that they can leverage that information better. They have all the information. We document it live. They have it in this dashboard. All the questions are answered. It's almost like a Bible that they can come back to before they even apply it to each of the areas that we're suggesting. But it gains that alignment on that research portion that's so important. And it's not like an overwhelming list. It's not like, here's 200 questions we're going to answer. It's going to force you to think about the best fit features, pain points, benefits. What's your sales process? Is it broken? What are you doing today? Are you doing heavy top of funnel? Where are you over indexing? So just questions like that, that'll get them thinking in a non-threatening way, right? I'm asking them, they're volunteering the information versus me auditing and going, well, you're doing all of these things wrong. You tell me. And then I'll ask questions as if I was a buyer, and then we'll get down to the nitty gritty and then apply this to your marketing. Answer those objections up front. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we've cut down the questions quite significantly. It used to be a ton of questions.
Used to be 200 questions.
Yeah, it used to be a ton. But we've been able to cut that down and just really get down to like what's important. Again, companies will get exposed very quickly if they don't have alignment, because the exercise that we take companies through forces them almost to figure this out. And it's funny because the problem that I had at agencies was kind of the same problem that she had in house, right? We weren't learning enough about the product. Could you have ever told me the people in house didn't know about the product a lot either? No, right? With agencies, it's a little bit more boxed off. They're much more stringent, and well, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Taz, you tell me. Maybe both agencies and in-house are, but it's like the overall goal is to be able to take them through this exercise to help them achieve alignment. If there's anything that hooks us up in the process of doing this, that's when they need to get together as a team and kind of iron things out. But once that alignment is there, we come in and we help them use that information to the best of their abilities. And the best of their abilities is to be able to drive inbound leads. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, and the final portion, I just want some, key tips on achieving both your kind of objectives. And I know you put a bunch of stuff out there, but if we could just rehearse them a little for the benefit of any viewers and future viewers when we put this out as a blog post. I mean, starting with you, Tass, what makes a rubbish landing page and how does one improve that?
Super easy. So there's like the CRO side of things where I'm not meant to be. I was joking with someone the other day because I'm like, they're CRO specialists, right? So those are conversion rate optimization is what CRO stands for anyone who doesn't know. And I said that I should really position myself as a consumption rate optimization specialist, because as a B2B buyer in the past, that's what I've gone through, copious amounts of research before I put a business case together. I'm educating people internally. I'm working with how many meetings with a company. I mean, I'm not buying a $50 product. I'm buying a $50,000 product. Research and information is going to help me get there. So that's kind of what I'm making central and core to my landing page frameworks and foundation, is because we can sit here and optimize a landing page all day long from a CRO perspective, but that doesn't mean that it's going to impact pipeline down the road. So I can sit here and optimize a white paper one for you. But at the end of the day, if it's just a white paper, and especially if it's a garbage white paper, which, come on, most of them are, it's not going to impact pipeline. So anyway, back to from the CRO conversion side of the house, there are certain principles that I do follow, right? In order to make it a very focused experience, you do want to have as little distractions as possible. People fight me on this. Have a secondary CTA or whatever. I'm like, no, have one. They face so many decisions a day. I'm a parent of two. I'm up at 5 a.m. and I make 1,000 decisions before I even sit down at my chair, right? You got to make it as easy for me. Don't make it this Dory, experience where it's like, oh, over here now. And so it's like, look at my blog, sign up for my newsletter, download this white paper. Do you want a free trial? Like, what's happening? And so it's way too much. Focus it on one single experience and then focus a lot of your attention on the actual content. So no navigation. Your buyers are smart. They know where to go. If they want to go back to your main site, they know how to get there. They hit your logo, you go back. That's the universal place, right? No navigation. Single CTA. I always say that ratchet landing pages do better than over-engineered, over-designed ones. You don't need to have a lot of fancy stuff on there. In fact, things with a lot of animation and moving around is not always ADA compliant, and 25% of the population face some kind of disability. So you want to make it very static. It actually helps it load faster as well from a technical standpoint. And you want to give them a lot of information. All your imagery needs to be very relevant, not a lot of like stock imagery that serves zero purpose. So you want to make sure that it's product related content. If you have pictures of your customers, fantastic. That works great. And then keeping the footer to a minimal footer as well. And then each section should be kind of a snackable size. So when you scroll down, each section comes in view and it's not too much distractions around. Those are just like design principles that I always follow. From a content perspective, you always want to lead with, capabilities of the product. You want to showcase the features. One thing that I see is that people love to testimonial dump. You want to put relevant testimonials on there. So if you're talking about you have 5 products, you're talking about one specific product, the testimonials have to be relevant to that specific product. And then making sure that it's very clear the problem that you solve and why you solve it. So those are kind of my quick tidbits. I obviously have a ton more that I post about, but those are the ones that I see a lot of mistakes in that are just like repeat offenders. So that's kind of my first ones that I want out the door.
Yeah, to kind of touch on what I see is a lot of the same. Like I tell people, if you're creating comparison pages, you should not be leading them anywhere else except to a demo or a free trial or whatever that conversion action is. And this is a hill I will die on. Like bottom of funnel content should lead to a conversion action. Why? Because the person is already mentally there, right? Your competitors have probably educated them up until this point, right? So if we want to use, and I use the same example every time, like sales enablement software, before they got to best sales enablement software for enterprise teams, they were probably looking up what is sales enablement, right? This could have been months ago. This could have been years ago. We don't know, right? But the point is, it's almost like when you're playing football and the other team is almost about to get the touchdown and then you come in and get the interception and run it all the way back, right? Your competitors have educated them up until this point, bottom of funnel, and then that's when you come in and you grab them and you convert them from your end. It's not, of course, it's not that easy. You need to have the right value propositions and things like that, and you need to really resonate, and this is where we come back to alignment, right? So I don't do anything too fancy with my bottom of funnel pieces, right? Like people ask me, oh, what type of CTA should I have? And this and that. I'm like, in-text CTAs do wonderful for me. It's really just like a small call out and it says note, and then it has like a CTA. If you're, wanting to solve X problem, then reach out for whatever that conversion action is, right? It doesn't have to be difficult. People ignore the impactful stuff and focus on the small stuff. Like, oh, this call to action is green and I want it to be brand color blue. It's like, who cares, right? They don't care about that. They just want to know their pain points are going to be solved. They want to know how you're going to solve it. They want to understand the capabilities. They want to see case studies. They want to see testimonials relevant, right? So I don't overcomplicate this process. The process is already complicated enough, right? Bottom of funnel is just difficult in general. So I like to try to simplify the process for teams. Now, of course, some people, like add buttons in between and things like that. And I hate to, and Taz, I know you brought up like the CRO word. And a lot of what I do, I don't want to call it like conversion rate optimization, but it's a lot of just formulating different things and matching different things together. It's really like playing a game of like tic-tac-toe to me almost. It's like benefit, feature, product, capability, and you're just matching all the way down. And then I have different frameworks for those, right? So every framework has the same elements, right? Like again, pain points, features, all that, but they're just organized differently per framework. So again, I try to keep things very, very simple for everyone, other consultants that want to learn, and then clients and everything like that, and customers. And so that's my advice, is just like, don't overcomplicate smaller things. And it's difficult to understand like what's smaller, but things like what color the CTA is, and just you did say something about stock photos. I will say, yeah, don't use stock photos, at least not the corny looking kind, like the guys in the suits with the like, you know what I mean? Like add some humanization to what you're doing, right? And I think that plays into what we both do. Like we add a level of humanness to marketing. It's not just like, oh, buy my thing, buy my thing. Like we're understanding the prospect and making those relevant connections to be able to take them mentally and say, okay, oh, okay, they solved my problem. Let me go with them. Like when the prospect is reading, we almost want them to be like, ooh, okay, right? So it's like, in order to get that reaction, you have to make sure you're touching on what they care about. They don't care about what color your CTA is. They just want to know if you're going to solve their problem and make their job easier.
Yeah. I mean, that's one, especially for any designers out there that are spending copious amounts of times on color. Perhaps we shouldn't. Now, as a very final note, and this is one that has plagued us here, an apprehension of doing comparisons. Whether there's just an innate, at least from a personal experience, a hesitation in saying, okay, this is what so-and-so is doing, this is how we are doing it, in case you get into any tricky issues with a competitor. How do you address that? Irrespective of where you include it, so whether it's on an organic post or in a landing page. I mean,
Taz, I'm actually curious to hear if you dealt with this or how you deal with this, because I deal with it too, but I'm curious to hear your take on it.
When I was in-house, I was in a very, very competitive B2B SaaS market. We had dozens and dozens of competitors. And one of the things that they love to do, which is against Google's rules, is to leverage our trademark name in the ad copy, which is a big no-no.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, we had 86 open complaints to Google about our competitors, but there was such a high volume that I don't know if they just stopped paying attention. They're like, we can't, it's like playing whack-a-mole. They just couldn't hit them all fast enough. And then what they do is when they would catch one and then they'd tell them to stop, they would just put a new ad out and slightly misspell our name. So people still got it. And so this happened a lot. In situations like that, we had to resort to issuing C&Ds. We actually had a standard template because that's how many times we had to issue them. So we just started issuing C&Ds to get it to stop. Very extreme version, right? On those landing pages where they had the comparisons, they also did something which was they compared, we had multiple products and they were competing with one of our products. But what they did was they made a comparison matrix of a product that wasn't the competitor product, right? One of our other products with that product, and said, we did not have these features and they had all of these features. When in reality, if you were comparing the same product, apples to apples, we did beat them out. So that is standard B2B comparison page plays that we love to do, right? Which is why I ran a poll and I said, do you trust competitive pages? And every single person's like, heck no. It is, it's obviously biased. You're obviously going to pump up your product. You're going to talk shit about your competitors and all of those things, right? That's the general reputation. And in my mind, I'm like, well, can we change that? Are there companies doing that better? And what's the common sense thing to do? And can you play respectfully in the sandbox, right? Playing nice in the sandbox, me and my sandbox. Okay. So that's when I started searching for them as well. And I found one with Loom and Vidyard, and I posted about that one. And I said, the comparison pages don't work because these are what we do. We crap on our competitors. We place an overemphasis on how amazing we are. We misrepresent everybody because we barely know our product. You think we're going to represent a competitor's product? Well, come on. We don't have time for that. We're just putting stuff out there because we know people are searching and we don't care what we put up. But the problem is it actually makes you lose credibility when you misrepresent either side to your buyers, because guess what? They're going to consume information about your competitor one way or the other. So if they see that you've said something that your competitor actually does have, it's going to be a problem. You're going to lose credibility. You're going to look like the one that plays dirty, the bully in the playground. And so with Loom and Vidyard, what I really loved about their example, and this was a kind of it was a paid landing page, but again, optimize more for consumption than conversions. And what they said was both sides did a great job. And Loom did a little bit of a better job, but both sides did a great job. They didn't crap on each other. They said, yes, Loom is a great tool. And Loom said, yeah, if you are a small marketing team, you're trying to eliminate meetings. So the first surface level use case, right? You're trying to eliminate meetings. You just want to send a quick video with a screen capture. We are a great tool. We're also cheap. And so you could get multiple seats for X price. If you want a full video production platform, Vidyard is great. Vidyard is great for enterprise teams. So Loom's actually saying we're unselecting ourselves from the enterprise market. Vidyard owns that. They have the same screen recording capability. But the thing is, if you're going to pay the price for Vidyard, then you're going to get a lot more. Determine if you need more than what we're offering or not. They didn't crap on Vidyard. They said, great company. They're doing great things over there. We are just better for small teams. They're better for larger teams. Vidyard did the same thing. So what happens is it's a chain reaction. You know, when you go through the Starbucks line, I don't know if they do this in Europe, but over here they do it. You go to the Starbucks line and then they said, hey, that person paid for you back there. And then it's this chain reaction of everybody pays for the person behind them. Yeah, you're looking shocked.
No,
So they do this.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
They do this sometimes. And so what happens is if you start to play nice with some integrity, it starts to have this domino effect where your competitors are like, you know what? You gave us credit. We're going to look like the crappy ones if we just sit here and shit on your product. So we're going to tell people what we think is good about you, right? So you're setting the standard for a new way to do stuff. And they didn't have to do a comparison matrix. Check marks, X, Y, whatever, because the one thing that's missing in both the organic format and on a paid landing page format is context. That is so incredibly important to answer things within context. And a matrix isn't going to give you that. You know, a matrix is going to be like, yes, no, but yes, no with what? There's 1,000 nuances, there's 1,000 caveats. Answer the core questions. So I think that's where we can do things a little bit differently is, you know, nod to them because inevitably your competitors do something better than you do. I mean, that's just the truth of it, you know? So that's my experience. And that's the take I use as well when I'm generating comparison pages for my clients.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I get a lot of, oh, we don't want to include the product in the content and things like that. So I've tried to bend and adjust a little bit to be able to serve teams that really don't want to, you know, maybe it's something external, maybe it's PR, maybe this other company has a you know, like C&Ds, you know, things like that. So I have a couple frameworks where the comparison page is just a long, you know, kind of drawn out. I don't even want to say drawn out. It's just a longer form breakdown of the features that specific use case care about the most. We don't, you know, review competitors or anything like that. But what I will say is that some of the best teams I have worked with have been, you know, they have marketing VPs that believe in the product, that believe in communication, that encourage communication. So I would say, like, if you are a marketing leader listening to this, I would highly encourage you to just read, educate yourself a little bit on the positives of including your product in your content and how much it could really help, not even just like Taz said, like for just even for consumption, not even just for conversion. So I would empower leaders to start doing that. We've given them a lot of things to think about today.
And on that bombshell, thanks so much, guys. If again, if you want more of this stuff, please do follow Tas and Lashay. There's bags of fascinating insights, which I spent the better part of this afternoon, you know, digesting, and I was like taking down note. And so, yeah, thanks so much for being on, and yeah, hope we continue benefiting from your knowledge, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.